Begin with the 121st Psalm of David. Shir lamahalot esainai el harim me'ayin yavo ezeri me'im Adonai ose shamayim va'aretz Al yiten lamot raglecha, al yanum shomrecha, hine lo yanum velo yishan shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha yad yeminecha, Yomam Hashemesh lo yakeka ve'yareach b'halayla. Adonai yishmorcha mikora yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzedcha uvoecha me'ata ve'ad Olam. I turn my eyes to the mountains and ask, from where will my help come from? Our help comes from our Maker, Hashem, Maker of heaven and earth. Adonai will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. The guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your protection. A guardian at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm as he guards your life, your going and coming, now and forever. In the book of Kohelet, it says that we never have the opportunity to see enough of the world. Young or old, those who depart this world never complete their task, never have a chance to cherish their loved ones enough before being called home. And when I think of Larry, I think how he would wish to have another respite from a final summons being called away from us, and how we yearn to have Larry close to us for another precious moment together, another joy, another challenge in our lives. So we ask God to be with the family whose hearts are broken, because whenever this parting comes, it comes far too soon. And to console them at this hour, and to be near to them when light seems so far away, and to sustain them until a time of healing. It is my honor at this time to indicate those who will be speaking words of hesped, and we'll begin with his brother Sandy, nephew Maury, and cousin Larry. Is it Larry? Larry, and then followed by son Michael. Sandy.
Thank you, Cantor Loomer. Dear family and friends, I've been told that when my mother was pregnant with Larry, I wouldn't look at her. I was in denial that another member was being added to our special family. Silly me. Larry was an amazing brother. I was so lucky. He was my greatest supporter. He was my greatest fan. He adored me. I adored him. When we were young, Sundays meant Sandy was taking Larry to the movies. They were generally lousy B movies like Sinbad the Sailor or King Kong versus Godzilla. But once we were lucky enough to see Jerry Lewis doing a live comedy shtick before his movie, The Nutty Professor. Larry was a devoted and respectful son of our late parents, Dorothy and Dave. He always ran errands for them, and when they were no longer well, He made sure that he visited them as much as he could. The Larry I remember was the kindest, most sociable person I knew. He inherited that rare gene from our father. As Cantor Loomer said to me, Larry was like a great big teddy bear. You always wanted to be with him. You always wanted to give him a big hug, a huge hug. Larry was the sweetest person you could ever have met. If you asked Larry to do something, it was taken care of. He would give you the shirt off of his back. He was the donut man, bringing donuts to the staff at his clients' offices, his doctor's office, and yes, his dentist's office too. Larry was so much fun to be with. He loved slapstick humor. He adored the Three Stooges. He loved to tease and loved to play harmless jokes on people. The Larry I remember always had a positive outlook on life. He looked for the best in people. He never focused on their faults. He was never cynical. He hardly ever criticized. Larry was the first to volunteer when he was a member of the Beth Radon congregation. He loved running their social programs. He was also a weekly volunteer of the bingo group. Larry loved children. He loved to be with them, talking with them, joking with them, listening to them. Let's face it, Larry was just a big kid himself. He and Arlene loved to babysit our children, Lindsay and Maury, and take them on various outings. Then Larry and Arlene hit the jackpot when Michael came into their lives. Larry adored Michael. He took so much pride in everything Michael did. Larry was the biggest, proudest dad. Larry was a dedicated husband. Arlene was the love of his life. She was his Berchert. They met in grade school and reconnected in high school. He so adored her. They enjoyed 34 years of bliss together. Ida and I got to see this firsthand as we spent a lot of time with them enjoying activities such as the symphony, Stage West, and going out to restaurants. Larry was a great salesman. How could he not be? The sociable, fun to be with, helpful, supportive guy was the salesman of the year at Thomas and Betts on at least 2 occasions. Who wouldn't want to buy from Larry? Larry loved to be the chef at barbecues and barbecues for his clients. He loved to sling those burgers and dogs. It had to be those gourmet cooking classes that Larry and I took at George Brown College that made him master chef. Larry excelled at trying to be a great athlete. I don't think there was a golf tournament where he didn't win the most honest golfer award. Personally, I didn't know that Larry could count so high. Unfortunately, the last few years were very challenging for Larry and not at all fair. First, Larry struggled with his walking due to knee issues. Then came COVID and being downsized shortly after his employer was acquired by a foreign competitor. But the unexpected and sudden loss of Arlene burst his bubble. It sucked the air right out of him. He could not get over this injustice. Our once happy-go-lucky Larry became somber. The more and then other medical issues reared their ugly heads. Yet Larry valiantly tried to stay upbeat. On behalf of Michael, Ida, and myself, I'd like to thank the nursing staff and Dr. Berger of the Reactivation Care Center and the nursing staff at Langstaff Square for their amazing care that Larry received. As well, we'd like to thank all of you. Michael, Ida, and I are so lucky to have such a warm and supportive group of family and friends that rally around us in our time of grief. Larry, I'll miss your 20 or 30 phone calls a day. I'll miss sitting with you at lunch or at dinner. And I'll miss holding your hand and reassuring you that everything will be all right. Larry, I'll miss you.
Hi, I'm Maurice Shessel. My Uncle Larry was always in a good mood. I can't ever remember seeing him angry, upset, annoyed, displeased, irked, sour, or just plain grumpy. If the length of one's lifespan could be determined by the positivity they exude or the happiness that they share with others, then my Uncle Larry should have lived 200 years. But sadly, he was taken from us much too early. He was only 65, but when you consider how many people walk around sad and miserable half their lives, well, I say in that sense, my uncle got to experience more happy times than most people ever will. It was impossible to keep that man down. There have been many iterations of this story told over the decades, but when childhood shenanigans and a little bit of sibling bickering resulted in my sister Lindsay tossing my boot out my uncle's car window and onto Bathurst Street, it didn't become a reason for him to scold us. It became a funny story he loved to tell and retell over the years, teasing us about it all the time. My Uncle Larry wanted to be like a second father to us, and he truly was. I tagged along with him to visit clients on Take Your Kid to Work Day at school, where I saw that everybody loved my uncle. During the summers, in between camp and school, he'd take me out to dinner and he'd grill me about what sort of mischief I'd be getting myself into. And when my parents were tired and drained of energy, he was such a great uncle, he'd take me out to the arcade and he would let me go wild. Oh, and him and my Aunt Arlene gave the best presents ever. Hanukkah 1992, I never screamed so loud in my life when they bought us a brand new Super Nintendo. And that was my uncle. He was giving, he was caring, he was compassionate, he was joyful. All the things that the world is really lacking right now. It's a cruel thing to have to watch great men age. I mean this in the most flattering way possible when I say that when I was a kid, I didn't see my Uncle Larry as an adult. My childhood brain thought, adults are boring and lame and they don't know anything about fun. And yet, my uncle was none of these things and still an adult. And that's the snapshot of him I'll place on the front page of the photo album in my mind. He was a young man who was never meant to be old, so I won't ever think of him that way. Goodbye, Uncle Larry. I love you, I miss you, and I'll never forget you.
First of all, Todd, Sandy, Michael, thank you for this honor. Hello. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Larry's cousin Larry, also known as Little Larry. Larry was Big Larry only because he was older than me, even though I was taller than him. Hence why we were both given the names Big Larry and Little Larry. Larry and I were very close growing up. As the years went by, we became even closer. As you may have read or heard from others, and especially if you were lucky enough to know Larry, there is not one bad word or thing you can say about him. He was the most generous, kindest, compassionate person who would always go out of his way to help you. Just like in every relationship, there are good times and bad times, but whatever we went through together. And as the saying goes, blood is thicker than water, and this was very evident in our relationship that we shared together. There were plenty of good times and bad times that we went through, as I had mentioned, but one of the good times, in fact probably the best time that Larry and I never forgot, and that we often talked and laughed about for many years, was when he won a trip to Jamaica for two and asked me if I would go with him. So off we went, and on one of the days when we were there was a party for the hotel guests on the beach. Now keep in mind that we were in our early 20s and two naive guys who wouldn't even know if we were being picked up by women. While we were having a couple of drinks, two women asked Larry and I to dance, so we accepted. I thought to myself, wow, are we going to get lucky tonight? But the only problem was that Larry told me that they were prostitutes. And I said, no, they're not. He said, Larry, I'm telling you, they are. But I didn't listen to him, and he started to get upset at me because I didn't believe him. To make a long story short, it ended up they were, and we didn't dance with anyone else that night. We sat and drank and watched the party from where we were sitting for the rest of the evening, so I thought. Then the next thing I knew, we were up in our hotel room, and I was lying in bed, and he was taking care and consoling me as I didn't know what had happened. Apparently, I didn't realize the rum that I was drinking was 100% proof, and I had passed out, and he was putting cold compresses on my head. I never heard him laugh so much in my life, and all he said to me was that I kept telling him how much I loved him. One of the many cherished memories we shared together, and one that I will never forget for the rest of my life. In closing, Larry was also very close to my dad. May he rest in peace, who was Uncle Abe to him. And both of them would always like to share a drink or two together, whether it was at a kiddush after shul, at simchas, at Jewish holidays, etc. So I will not be sad today, as I'm sure he's having a good time and having to drink, or drinks, with his uncle, who would have been 96 today, and Larry, who would have been 66, 2 weeks from this coming Wednesday, November the 15th. Larry, I love you and will miss you very much. This is not goodbye. All that I'll say is till we see each other again. May God bless you and be with you. May you rest in peace.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for attending. And those currently watching the live stream, thank you so much for tuning in as well. My father was a good man. Funny, considerate, compassionate. Also wise as well. I will never forget all the times we spent together. Driving downtown aimlessly, just enjoying the time together, listening to the Rat Pack, listening to Dean Martin, listening to Frank Sinatra, and all of the great artists of that time. Eating a hot dog or a hamburger at a random stall on the street, while also looking out for prostitutes when it came to the evenings. I won't ever forget the times whether it was him, me, or my mother. We would just randomly scare each other. I remember once I was on the second floor, and on the hallway leading to the master bedroom, my dad was walking towards the landing. I was hiding behind a Yogi plushie that we had. I was only 7, 8 years old. And I jumped the corner and scared him. And never before in my life have I ever seen that man jump 2 feet in the air the way he did. I will miss the days where I would help him on the barbecue, while Mom was making her rice casserole. I'll miss the times where we would go fishing on those rare moments when we could. Especially that one moment when I was just a kid. We were about to leave, but I begged him to stay. I ended catching the biggest fish out of the pond when we caught nothing. And I ended up giving it to my grandmother and grandfather, my Bubby and Sadie. I won't forget also the times we went swimming at a swimming pool, just enjoying ourselves, splashing each other, having fun, or going tobogganing right down the hill that was literally across the street from Uncle Sandy and Auntie Ida. I remember one thing he told me once, many years ago. He was sitting on the couch. He looked at me and said, "Michael, give me a kiss." I said, "Okay," and I did. After I did, I asked him why. He looked me straight in the eye and he said, "You never know. Life is a wild card. We never know what's going to happen." Daddy, Father, you are my hero, my inspiration to the type of person I truly want to be, who I truly want to be like. I love you, and thank you for all the lessons, for all the laughs, for everything you gave me. And I will do my hardest to live up to you and Mom's legacy as much as I can.
I had the honor, the zechut, the merit of knowing Larry for over 20 years and considered him a friend, and he considered me a friend. Can't say that about everyone. Larry lived up to his Hebrew name, which is Eliezer, a helper to God, someone who helps others. But he really exemplified who our forefather Abraham was. It just happens to be that in this Torah portion in which we just read, it talks about Avraham, who was in severe pain and agony and went through a circumcision at an older age, that he had to rush out of bed to get going, to get to the door, to greet angels, to greet others, to help them. Larry had a talent of being able to turn the table around to make it about you if you were asking about him. Larry, how are you? How are you today? I'm okay. So tell me more. He wanted to know more about you. He turned it around so he could ask you questions to see how you were feeling and how you were doing, whether it was by a phone call or a text. You know, you were lucky because you were his brother. So you had 20 or 30 phone calls a day. I only got 15. But later on, you know, after Arlene passed away, and he was lost, we would text each other all the time. Shana Tova, have a happy Passover, have a happy, every excuse. It didn't matter what holiday, what was coming up. It would be like almost like a competition. Who's going to send who the message? It was already on my mind. If I don't send it to him, I'll be the bad guy because he'll send it and I wouldn't have done it first. And this would go back and forth. And he was great at keeping in touch. And it was only yesterday that this guilt overwhelmed me because as I was reading the yahrzeit list in shul morning at 7:30 in the morning, and I was reading the names, and it was Arlene's father's yahrzeit yesterday, and I said, I have to reach out. I got to send Larry a text to tell him I was there in shul because I said the Kaddish. Because I knew he wasn't there. And the text I was going to send was, "Where are you?" And as I got a coffee, I got a call that he'd passed. And I missed that opportunity. And that's why moments ago I stood in front of the casket for as long as I did, because I was asking Larry Mechila forgiveness for not being the one to reach out to him most recently when he was ill. You know, Sandy, when you were going through your own personal physical struggles just recently and treatments, he phoned me up and he said, "Marshall, you have to make a Misha Berach for Sandy. But don't tell Sandy I said so." So I said, "I'll make a Misha Berach." Then he called me next day. "Did you make the Misha Berach? I want you to make a good one. Make sure you say a good one. I need a good one for Sandy. It has to be a good Misha Berach. Make a good Misha Berach." And I made Mother Misha Berach. I said, "Larry, I'm doing it. I'm saying we're praying that you should be healthy and the whole family should be healthy." And then he'd call again, only 10 or 15 times a day. I miss those calls. I'm going to always miss those calls and those texts. And his magic and his ability to make sure that he was able to connect with each and every one of you. He really was a teddy bear, a gentle soul, someone who we could learn to emulate. If we could all be a little bit gentler, a little bit more like Larry in this world, what a great place this would be. So it would be a wonderful place to live. I think that we have an obligation to keep his Shem Tov, that good name, alive in all of our hearts, in the community and the family, especially for Michael. And you said that he was your hero, which means that kabedet avicha v'timecha kol yemei chayecha. You have the obligation of honoring his name and your mother as well, because they're there to. Arlene is telling him right now in heaven, "Larry, tuck in your shirt." But the obligation is to remember him by being like him, by being kind to others. If we do that, then that energy will never die. He'll live forever in all of our hearts. Think of others as he did. Tihi nishmato tzu Rabbi Tzorah Chaim. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal, and may he rest in peace. Amen. Please rise. El Malei Rachamim, Sholchein Bameromim, Hamitzei Menucha Nechona Lekanfei HaShechina, Bemalot Kedoshim Utehorim, Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim, Et Nishamat Eliezer Lipa Ben David V'Devora, Shehalach Leolamo, Began Eden etemenu chato ana balarachamim asjirehu beseiter knafecha leolamim. Otzeror bitzeror hachayim nishmato Adonai unachalato. Veyanuach beshalom amishkavo venomar Amen. God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of Eliezer Lipa ben David Udvora, to Larry Shessel, who is gone to his eternal home together with Arlene. May he be remembered for all of the worthy deeds and mitzvot and deeds of kindness that he performed in this land of the living. May he rest in peace, as we say Amen. Interment will now take place at the Pardes Chaim Cemetery in the Beth Emeth section, and we'll wait for our director to give us further instructions, and we'll please remain standing until the family has exited.
All followers, please.
shepherd, I shall not want. Giving me repose in green meadows, leading me beside the still waters. Revive my spirit, guiding me on the right path, for that is God's essence. Do I walk through a valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm from you. Your staff and your rod comfort me. Prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please. For those of you joining in the procession to Bardez Hayam Cemetery, we ask that you turn on your high beam headlights and your four-way flashing hazard lights to identify yourselves as part of the procession. We do have the benefit of police located at the main intersection only, and when you approach an unsupervised intersection, we ask that you obey all traffic lights and regulations. For your safety, additional Benjamin's vehicles will be identified with a purple flashing light and be positioned midway through the procession. Do not drive past these vehicles, but remain in line behind them. Everyone is invited to tune their radios to 96.5 FM for further service information. And if you'll kindly exit through the rear doors of the chapel, that will take you directly to your cars. Thank you.
You're